Bernard, the European Parliament resolution, basically calling on all the parties in the north to get a move on.
Well, basically it's been tabled by various Irish MEPs, north and south. I just saw some of the names that were on the resolution. Jim Nicholson, Martina Anderson, and a number of MEPs from the south.
That's interesting that Nicholson would be in there because, you know, unionist, he's talking against his own people. Sort of move your act together, get it going.
Well, basically, it's a fairly general, broad resolution of support from the European Parliament. It was passed this morning without any kind of major disagreement. Yeah. There were a number of MEPs also from the south who added their name to the resolution. So I think it's basically the Parliament just endorsing support, reaffirming support.
It's not a warning as such of any kind.
No.
It's basically saying we're behind you, lads.
Yes, basically, and there's the money from the Peace and Reconciliation Programme. It acknowledges the money from the Peace and Reconciliation Programme.
Yeah, that's 150, is it, million?
Yes, the 150 million, I think, in the current round of Peace and Rec, as it's sometimes known.
It's Peace and Rec, yeah. Well, it's Peace and Develop. That's what we've hoped for, and it's ongoing. But the is this a helpful intervention? Are the people in the north? They haven't listened to the Irish government. They haven't listened to the Americans. They haven't listened to the British. They're still procrastinating. So what benefit is this going to be? I
don't think it's the factor that's going to make the big difference, but it's the international community, if you want, adding its voice. You have to remember the European Union, in conjunction with the Americans and the British and Irish governments, were the parties that were behind the Good Friday Agreement. Right. It was endorsed and supported by the European Union. Jacques Delors, the president of the European Commission at the time, was the person who came up with the idea for financial support for the peace process.
That made a big difference too.
Well, yes, it did. A huge amount of money has come from the European Union in terms of the peace process. I mean, there's been 3 or 4, I think possibly in the fourth, either the third or the fourth round of the European Peace and Reconciliation Programme.
Look a little bit beyond the movers of this resolution, and let's cogitate on whether Europe, as an entity, will tire of Northern Ireland being unable to sort out things like parades, flags, and issues of the past.
No, I don't think that works like that, Rowan. There's as much dissension and conflict within the European Parliament as there is. You know, there's issues going on within the European Parliament itself. The Commission President, Jean-Claude Juncker, is being hauled across the coals by the European Parliament itself at the moment. I don't think the European Parliament or the European Union will tire of the Northern Ireland issue. It's just another issue. It's another political issue. Yeah. I mean, it's like saying, would they tire of the Balkans, for example?
It's not in there as an option anyway. Yeah. But the Juncker thing, that relates to Luxembourg and the business there.
Well, basically the new president of the European Commission is Jean-Claude Juncker. He came into office at the beginning of November, and there was a release of papers by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists in Washington, who pointed to widespread tax evasion practices in Luxembourg while Jean-Claude Juncker was finance minister and later prime minister.
Will this have any bearing on the 300 million package that Juncker is presently preparing within the Commission for development work throughout the euro economy?
If a problem arises with Juncker's commission, it may delay or forestall moves like the 300 billion economic package that the European Commission is proposing at the summit in December, the European Heads of State Summit. Who knows what way this issue with the LuxLeaks, as it's known, could develop. It might quieten down. Jean-Claude Juncker came into the Parliament yesterday out of the blue, unexpectedly, to muster a strong defence of his position. He very fervently and assertively said there was absolutely nothing illegal with the practices that were carried on in Luxembourg when he was finance minister. But it's interesting to know, I was doing a bit of reading this morning. The last time there was a Luxembourg president of the Commission, he was forced to resign with his entire commission in 1999. Jacques Santer, his commission was, because of incompetence and corruption, was forced to resign, and he was also the finance minister of Luxembourg, and he was also the former prime minister of Luxembourg.
Luxembourg seems to be a fertile ground for this kind of commonality of malpractice, even corruption.
It is a haven and a paradise for banks. It's a small central Western European country. It is a haven for banks, finance and banking and financial services. And it's small. It's a facilitator for large companies for finance and financial services.
Yes.
Not unlike Switzerland, and to some extent not unlike the south of Ireland.
Yes,
it's a facility state as well for tax avoidance, and
we've seen what's happened there, for goodness sake. But could we be viewing at the moment Juncker maybe going to be that within Europe, within the Luxembourg leaks business, something will happen to Juncker that the British Prime Minister couldn't achieve? Cameron didn't want him in. Now they're maybe going to get him. Are we seeing the thin end of the wedge of the campaign to get rid of Juncker?
I don't think it's a campaign to get rid of him. I think this is, it was a consortium of investigative journalists have brought out this material. They've pointed to the material now. Whether they brought this out at a strategic time is a question. But Bloomberg, the very respected American business financial publication, in an editorial has called for Juncker's resignation.
Wow, that's big stuff.
And one of the groups now, the three of the parliamentary groups that supported Juncker's candidacy for the presidency, they're still supporting him.
Yeah.
They're supporting what he's saying about there was nothing illegal done.
They're believing him.
But there's one of the parliamentary groups, the United Left Nordic Green Group, of which Sinn Féin is a member. They yesterday were trying to muster enough signatures for a vote of no confidence against Juncker.
But Sinn Féin is I use the word merely, part of that wider group. They're not necessarily in harmony with the wishes of the group to muster the get rid of Juncker campaign.
They're a member of this parliamentary group, and like parliamentary groups are not on like their parties. There's a certain amount of party discipline or group discipline. It's a voting bloc.
A whip.
And, well, not as strong probably as the classical national parliament whip, but Sinn Féin would, I would imagine, be very supportive of the United Left Nordic Green Group attempt to get a vote of no confidence on Juncker. It'd be an interesting question to put to Martina Anderson or Sinn Féin representatives. Where do they stand on Juncker?
Where do they stand, indeed, and where do they stand on Cameron and his action against fellow Europeans, those he accuses of coming to Britain on benefit tourism?
Well, again, there's lots of, there seems to be an incredible speed of issues coming at the moment. The European Court of Justice, actually supported Cameron's position to some extent, or said that the notion of actually people just moving to another member state purely to get benefits is not something that is in the spirit of the European Union.
But that's a very hard thing to prove, Bernard.
Of course it would
be. If a man moves to better himself to find a future, How dare we assume he's there as a benefits tourist, you know?
Well, I think what's been referred to are people that are actually not working when they come from another member state and they're in another country and they're not actually working, or they're claiming benefits and have not been applying for jobs. I think that is the context.
If they can, that gives you the evidence, you know. But if a man says, I have no work in my natural homeland within Europe, I'm going to go to Britain in the hope of getting work, that surely must be within the spirit of Europe.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of technicalities around this. I mean, there's the whole issue of people, the vast majority of people from East and Central Europe in the likes of the UK, Britain, are working.
Yes.
There's very few of them are claiming just benefits. And if my memory serves me rightly, in the fairly recent past, in order to get benefits, if you were from another member state, you had to be in the country first, working for up to a year before you were entitled to benefits. So that's my broad recollection of the position on that.
Okay, as I said, it's got legs, it will run and run.
Yes, yeah.
The Russians are having a tough look at us. The bombers are now flying the rim of the Atlantic and the rim of the Pacific as close as they can come. And they're up in the Arctic, and the bombers, the Bear bombers are there. It's all down to the Ukraine. Is Europe exercised over this? Are we concerned?
As mentioned before, Rowan, there's been a lot of tension. There did seem to be some amelioration of tension recently, because Russia and Ukraine agreed on the gas exports.
Yes.
And even
hopeful at that stage.
they had agreed even, you know, Ukraine owes Russia quite a lot of money for gas. And the Russians and the Ukrainians came to some agreement there about a month or so ago, about in the last 2 months. There was also an election in Ukraine recently, and the eastern Ukrainian provinces that have a large Russian population, particularly enough, did vote fairly heavily and, you know, for pro-Russian parties. So in the wake of those elections, there seems to be a re-emergence of tensions again. And the issue, again, as mentioned once before in our exchanges, there's a simmering trade war going on between the European Union and Russia.
Irish cheesemakers losing out on it, you know. It's not good. The Russians are being very patriotic in what they're not buying.
Well, Irish dairy products are one of the things that are affected by the trade embargo to Russia. But I was listening to Radio 4 one morning, and I heard that cheese producers in England are a bit cheesed off with the Irish, especially Irish kind of high-end cheeses flooding the English cheese market. So they're a bit cheesed off, but I'm sorry for being a bit cheesy.
Good. Listen, hold that thought. Cheese or no cheese. We're breaking to have some adverts.
Destination Newry. We're back in moments.
Ted's Carpets Newry have a large selection of carpets, vinyl, wooden floors, solid, semi-solid, laminate floors and all flooring accessories. All for you to see in our showroom. Based in Newry, our staff have over 50 years of experience in the carpet and flooring industry and will be only too glad to help you choose the right floor covering that suits your needs and your pocket. Don't forget our furniture department, where we stock sofas, beds, bedroom furniture and everything else your home will need. Looking for a genuine bargain? Give Ted a shout. You won't be disappointed. Distance is no object. No job too big or too small. Commercial and domestic. Unit 1, Carney Hall Business Park, Rathford Island Road, Newry. Telephone 028 308 25782. Check out tedscarpetsnewry.com.
Newry Veterinary Centre, located on Patrick Street in Newry, is committed to providing you with the very best in pet healthcare. The veterinary team bring a wealth of experience to the practice and have individually obtained high standards of professional qualification. Our services include small animal, large animal and equine, 24-hour emergency service, consultations by appointment, ultrasound scanning, digital x-ray facilities, in-house laboratory and much more. Contact us today. Newry Veterinary Centre, 39A Patrick Street, Newry, or telephone 028 302 62266.
Come down to Max for fresh food at great prices. We deliver free to local businesses and schools, and we also deliver to the local area for a small charge of £3. So come down to us now.
You've reached your destination. Go!
Yeah, it's Rowan Hand. It's the morning programme. I'm here with Bernard Conlon. Bernard on Europe, our inside man, our intelligence out of the great empire that is the European Union. Not a bad thing to call it an empire. It is an empire.
I guess you could. I think it's going through turbulence, Rowan. I think, well, I suppose all empires go through phases of development.
Oh my God, not the decline and fall of...
Well, it hasn't quite taken off. Maybe it's reached the end of the runway and there's a stutter in the takeoff.
But it's what it's doing, certainly. It's putting some kind of humanity to Europe. Up to now, Europe has been a sterile place where things happened and legislation came gently out and stretched out before us. But now we see, as you say, there's a bit of a wobble going on. We're seeing the Achilles heel of Europe, and there is more than one Achilles heels. They're there, you know, and I just sense now for the first time we're seeing the human face of Europe in its wobbliness, to invent a word.
I think that's been one of the public relations problems that the European institutions have faced, is that it has been seen as a little bit bureaucratic, and I'm not quite sure with issues like the issue over the new commissioner and stuff like that, that it's really presenting a human face.
But maybe it's because we have never, ever had access to your kind of expertise before. You know this thing from the inside out,
well,
and you're there, and you're bringing us that inside track information, and we're beginning to see it in a different light. You are sort of painting the picture of Europe for us in simple terms.
Well, straightforward terms, I hope. It's a big subject. I think one of the problems with the whole European Union thing is it's 28 member states coming together, and you're talking about detailed policies, and you're talking about legislation, you're talking about policy formation. It's the sort of thing that I suppose people in their everyday lives, while it affects them, it's very hard to get a kind of a handle on it because there's so much detail, and it's the type of politics that's done at a ministerial level and within working groups and stuff like that. But there's a lot of issues now, you know, that are coming to the fore. I think the last time we spoke, I said we had a period of evolution, and I think maybe we've come into a period of manifestation, where some of these evolved treaties and policies that have come down over the last 20 years and the last 30 years, what they mean and what they entail in reality are starting to have impact. And that's creating, well, and there's a lot of political and economic change in Europe. Europe, since the financial crisis, the Eurozone has been in crisis. And even yesterday, the American Treasury Secretary said that Europe must do something to avoid a lost decade.
Yeah,
a
lost decade.
When you hear an American Treasury Secretary saying to the Europeans they must spend more money, there must be less austerity, there must be less adherence to tight fiscal policy. That's quite a message.
But isn't that the balance? You need austerity, but you also need developmental investment so that you can grow to a point where you no longer need austerity.
Well, you know, I wouldn't claim to be economics austerity. I don't think the austerity thing has been a good thing at all. I think that, to go back to our earlier point, there's a proposal from the new Commission to have 300 billion euros for some kind of for growth and job creation, in inverted commas. Now, how that's going to be implemented in real terms is kind of vague. It's, again, a complicated package. There'll be money diverted to the likes of the European Investment Bank. And that, when it goes to the European Investment Bank, that'll be distributed through national banks.
Yes.
And so, and there's calls for public-private partnerships. And mechanisms like that. Whether that £300 billion package will counter the impact of austerity remains to be seen.
We'll see, indeed.
Yeah.
But I mean, it comes as no surprise to move on to politics in other areas of Spain, for example. The Catalonians have said 80% in favour of independence from Spain. That's no surprise, really.
No, it's not really.
But how's that going to impact? If first of all, it's not going to happen. They will not have independence from Spain.
The Spanish would be very. That was an unofficial referendum that took place in Catalonia. And it showed a large majority of people in favour of independence from Spain. But Catalonia is an economic hub in Spain, so the Spanish central government wouldn't be too comfortable with any moves. But there's 7 million people in Catalonia, so it's 2 million more than Scotland. And there's quite a number of smaller member states. So Catalonia, as an individual unit, is perfectly viable.
It is, but it's not something Europe would, at this stage, because of the Spanish veto on it, would be particularly concerned about.
Well, no, the European Union wouldn't be supportive of Catalonian independence, nor were they supportive of Scotland.
Indeed.
And the president, during the Scottish referendum, Barroso, very clearly let his opinion be known. For an unelected president, I'm not sure that was appropriate, but he did voice an opinion on Scottish independence, and it's quite clear what the views would be on Catalonian independence.
Yes, indeed. The Europe of today that we're talking about, this new sort of energised, this new phase of delivery of policies coming to fruition, is it a very different Europe to the Europe which you served in as a journalist for all those years back a decade ago?
Well, again, Europe has changed quite a bit, and you know, I think it's good that we're now starting to talk about things that we've previously mentioned, because they say repetition helps people understand. When I was in Brussels, basically from the mid-80s to the early 90s, there were, as I say, a sequence of treaties. And I think now we're actually seeing the practical delivery of those treaties. But again, 2004, we had the Eastern European countries coming in, and that fundamentally changed the nature of the European Union. That was a game changer. So it is a different. We've had the economic crisis, which was not foreseen in the severity that it's occurred, but it was a crisis largely brought about by bankers. And are we seeing the issues to do with financial systems and banking and tax evasion? Are we seeing those issues really being addressed by Europe? That's one of the questions we need to ask.
Now, Cameron obviously wants out. That's there.
Well, I wouldn't say Cameron wants out. There are people within his party who want out. Because he was, I mean, he'll
put up with Juncker, and he'll stay in. He'll be happy.
I mean, Cameron is locked into delivering a referendum, but Cameron himself, I think, would be pretty close to the CBI line, the Confederation of British Industry line, which is
Stay in.
very pro-European Union.
Yeah. One confuses sometimes his anger at things like benefit tourism, things like Juncker and not wanting him as commissioner, with his desire to be in or out. But you, for example, you're a European a Europhile, and do you sense from your broad base of experience, Bernard Conlon, that Europe is sitting easily for all of us at this time? Should we be happy to be in Europe still?
Big question, and Europe is undergoing a period of change. The next 3 to 4 years, 5 years, the term of this Commission, the term of this Parliament, will see major discussions and major debates. You have to remember that big chunks of Southern Europe, like Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Greece, have been virtually floored by the consequences of the financial crisis and recession. And France, one of the central pillars of the European Union, along with Germany, there's a huge discomfort there also about where the European Union's at. So the term of this Parliament and the term of this Commission are going to see massive questions and discussion about what direction Europe is going to take. And again, we can't predict the future. The European Union, Europe in some shape or form will always be present. I don't think it's going to go away, but who knows what shape it may evolve. Will there be further expansion or extension of Europe? There are other countries wanting in. The Baltic countries want in. Serbia, Macedonia, those countries are applying. Turkey is a candidate country. There are 80 million people of a very low standard of living in Turkey. I would find it. I find it very difficult that a lot of people in the current European Union would want 80 million poor Turkish people coming into the European Union.
And the Italians have now ended their Mare Nostrum, the philosophy of going into the Mediterranean to rescue migrants from North Africa, on the basis that if we do that, it will encourage more to come. We must teach those who wish to come that it's a dangerous thing to do, so we let them drown.
Well, that was a sounding coming out from a European Union-based policy. The European Commission's view on immigration is basically to be supportive of it, actually, and basically support. Because there are a number of European Union countries, particularly Germany, whose demographics are quite low. They're not really reproducing themselves.
Yes.
Germany needs immigrants to actually, I suppose, sustain its economy. But whether Germany's economy, which is a very high-tech, whether it will need sort of low unskilled labour in coming years and coming decades is a very big question.
Yep.
So there's so much to be considered, but I think, as I say, we've had turbulence, but there's going to be debate and discussion and lively ones, and who knows what the future will be.
Interesting times, Bernard Conlon, and I thank you yet again for putting flesh on the difficult bones of our European home. Thank you.
Thank you,
God
Ron.
bless you.
Thank you.